Hey, HR friends, welcome back. This is vlog number 2. If you missed number 1, you're going to want to watch that one as well, and I would recommend watching these in order. That's why we've numbered them. They're sequential. We want all new users to immediately see what they can do to make sure they're giving their body the best chance to heal, to rest, to slow down aging, and reverse disease. Now, we're going to quickly review what we talked about on vlog 1, and we're going to build on that in this one, okay? So we talked about these downward micro spills right here that come down into the yellow and into the green sections, okay? And this is important to understand because this is when your body goes into its natural state of healing. Now, in these P frequencies, the macros, they last 12 hours. There's 2 macro Ps that make up a 24-hour section, and that's why there are 2 downward micros here that we're trying to harvest. So, for example, at 5:32 p.m. is when we switched into the new 24 hours, and I literally just did a post just before 5:30. And when I finished that post, I was right here in my rhythm. Now, I'm going to bring us to current time so you can see when I'm starting to make this video. So it is currently 8:57 p.m. Friday, 6/21/2024, and you can see exactly where I am in my rhythm. I waited, I gave my body time to rest and digest, and now my rhythms pop back up and I'm harnessing that power, and now I'm going to work tonight. I've got a good 4 or 5 hours here where I'm going to knock a bunch of stuff out. This is how you start to organize your routine around your rhythms. Because if I force myself to work through this, all I do is I steal my body's capability of doing its full potential of resting, recovering, and rejuvenating. Okay? Now, this happens twice in a 24-hour period of time. Usually one time we're awake and one time we're asleep. That's pretty simple, right? Okay, so that's the review here. Now, last thing we're going to do is we're going to review what we talked about over here. So this is the micros for the emotional, and I want you to see this right here. So this is the 3-1 emotional we're currently in right now. This is a 6.5-day frequency. There are 48 of these small e's inside of this big E, and if you go, what do you mean there are 48? So 48, watch, every time this goes up and down, it goes up and down 48 times until it gets here. Then it goes up and down another 48 times until it gets here. There are 2 6.5-day sequences. This is a 6.5-day sequence. This is a 6.5-day sequence. This is a 13 sequence altogether. Why is it in this side right now? Well, let's explain that. You see this blue right here? That means it's first person. So this is your first person 6.5-day. And then when this time bar gets over here, I promise you, this will be purple. When we get to the 3-2, it's going to be purple and it's going to be located over here. And what this is telling you is what you're being tested in. Okay. Right now, we're being tested in first person emotional, first person physical, and we're being tested in third person mental. And this mental one, this goes on for the entire year. This takes 1 year right here. This takes 1 year right here. And when you see these micros, there are 48 micros in a 1 year period. Just like there are 48 small e's in the big E, and there are 48 small p's in the big P. Now, when you're looking at this and we're using these controls, I want you to see how to move from valley to peak here. That's this micro button. That's moving at 3.5 hours of time. Watch. Okay, there's one peak. Now we're going to go to the next. You see that? All right, we're going to move over one more. Okay, so you see this downward edge right here. Now, I want you to see that's this downward edge right here. Watch. You see this downward peak right here? That's zoomed in. That's this downward peak. Watch what happens. I'm going to move another 3.5 hours and we're going to take it right to the edge of that downward peak. Now, the whole thing shifted over. Remember, we always show you 12 hours ahead. So when we get to the end of 12 hours, we shift everything and then because we want you to see the next 12 hours. So the whole graph shifts over. Now, look at, there's the downward spin. See it? Here it is right here. Now, look at, you can see when I get into my deepest state right here, my physical and my emotional rhythm both hit parasympathetic function at the same time. That's when I'm going to be right here. Watch, I'm going to move it to it now so you can see. All right, one more. We're moving 3.5 hours, and you can see it's just going from chunk to chunk, and it's going to go to this chunk next. Watch. Okay, so now you're starting to see what's going on over here is really giving you an ability to see days ahead. This is a 6.5-day sequence. And you can see that now I'm in my healing phase right here. Well, that starts at 7 p.m. on Saturday. But really, we want to back this up. It starts a little bit before that. I'd want to capture as many of these as I can. So this is what I do. This is my goal. If it gets into the green, I'm going to stay pretty restful. If it's in the yellow, I'll do a little bit of light activity, but if it's in the green, I'm sitting still. Why? Because that's when your body really needs your cooperation. And you can see here that I'm going to be from Saturday mid-afternoon and even a little bit before that. This is going to be more like Saturday at noon. Watch. So Saturday at noon is when I'm going to really start to rest. And we're just going to walk through this again. I know. I want you to get used to using these controls and seeing what's happening here. So this 3.5 hour button is really helpful when you're looking at your micro rhythms on your emotional rhythm over here. All right, let's keep going here. And you can see that my rest and healing phase is going to continue until Sunday morning at 5:02 a.m. Now, this is going to be super easy to capture in here because, well, I'm going to be sleeping at night in Eastern time zone. This one, I'm going to have to organize around a little bit. Okay. Now, again, I'm hitting this because we want you to be able to use this technology to move forward and backwards through your rhythms, be able to see the exact times that are going on here. And that's how you're going to start to really notice an improvement in your ability to recover and your body's ability to stay healthy. All right, so we've introduced a lot of new information, especially got into some details about what we're looking at here, how these are the micro rhythms, and how there are 48 micros that are inside of each of these macros that are functioning. Okay. Now, I didn't mention this. So you see where this little black ball is here, and this little black ball right here, and this little black ball right here. What that's doing is it's showing you the strength of the macro. So if we looked at the mental rhythm here for mine, right? So it's just below the 50% mark. So is it here, just below the 50% mark. It's just above the 50% mark. Look at the purple's just above the 50% mark. And the blue is below the 50% mark. Look at the blue is below the 50% mark. These are just mirroring what's happening over here. But we didn't want to put more lines here. We want to keep this as open, as free for you to see as possible so it doesn't hinder you. So now you can start to see that this display is just zoomed in so you can get into the nitty-gritty details. And this displays are giving you just a little bit more vision into the future and also lets you know where the macro is. So imagine this. We always go through the same micro pattern. It's the same. We are a repeating algorithm. That's how I would say that. We are just an algorithm. It repeats, it repeats, it repeats, it repeats, it repeats. The only thing that changes is the position of the macro. If the macro is up here, it feels like it's stronger. If the macro is down here, it feels like it's weaker. That's how simple that is. All right. Now, let's end with just a little rhythmic analysis here. So looking at my stuff, you can see that I'm really running just in this orange and yellow zone. And you can see that my macros are running around the 50% mark. This is vanilla, okay? Now, when we come up here and look at the circadian graph, you can see there are some pretty jagged edges here. There's some pretty big falls that are happening, some pretty big ups that are happening in my emotional rhythms. Now, my emotional rhythms are parked down in the yellow and the green. So these big transitions aren't going to be as noticeable to me as if they were up here. But I promise you, these transitions are going to be big things that are going to happen. So when I get to a place where it's about to go up, oh, I'm going to have a thought that says, I got to think about this and I got to worry about this person. And what you don't want to do is you just don't want to overreact. It's okay to have thoughts because that's what's going to happen here. As these rhythms go through, what they do is they create the thoughts that we have. They create the ongoing story in our heads. And this can really get the story going in a wrong way or it can get it into a defensive way. So this is why we highlight this stuff. So when you see yourself going through this, that's not the time where you're laying down and thinking to yourself and all of a sudden you're creating that story about why you're mad at this person or what has to happen in order for things to get better for you. Things will get better for you when you take responsibility for you and understand your rhythm. Now, this is fortunate for me because look at my rhythm stay kind of calm here through the night. So I'm going to have a little peak here, but then after about 12 or midnight, I'm going to be down here in an area where it's going to be kind of easy to rest. And as long as I've got all my emotions in order, I should be able to sleep through this. Now, these big jagged edges, if you've got finished business with the people in your life and you've got emotional unease that's still going on in your life, it's going to be pretty hard to sleep through something like that. Okay. Now, here's my advantage. You can see that my physical rhythm is going to be ripping tomorrow, and my emotional rhythms are going to be kind of quiet here, especially in late morning into the mid afternoon. I promise you, this is where I'm doing my work on the computer tomorrow. I'm going to be prepping, I'm going to be getting all my stuff done. I'm trying to just point out the easy things to see here. Okay. I, I want you to start to get better at understanding how this works. And look at, by the time this peak happens, by the time this is done, this is where my rest phase is just starting to happen. So I would actually, by about noon, I'd start to pull things back because it's going to be hard for me, right? I'm going to want to do something physically, even though part of my rhythms are starting to get into that healing phase. All right, that's enough for today. That's plenty for today. We're going to get back to this the next time. And again, we really want you to just start to understand the graphs on this side, what they're meant to do, and how to harvest these healing times, both here and both here. All right, see you next vlog.